This case from the United States is both grim and deeply saddening.
The FBI has offered to help in the case of a missing person in Chattanooga.
We want her home and we want her safe.
This is the heartbreaking case of Jasmine Pace. Pay attention to the man in the footage. He's walking outside an apartment complex, dragging a suitcase behind him. At first glance, he may seem like any other person, maybe heading out for a quick trip or returning from one. But what's inside that suitcase is a disturbing secret he's desperately trying to hide. Hi, this is Victor from Crimes Anatomy, and this week's case is about horror and heartbreak, and might infuriate you as it did me, but it really happened. Let's get into it. Just days before Thanksgiving, 22-year-old Jasmine Pace and her family was struck by heartbreak. Her great-grandmother, a beloved matriarch of the family, had just passed away in the emergency room. The grief was heavy, but none of them knew the worst was still to come. Jasmine had always been incredibly close to her mother's side of the family. Despite her parents' divorce 20 years earlier, she still had a strong, tight-knit bond with her mother, Katrina, and her stepfather, who ran a construction company. They were building a house nearby for Jasmine, and in the meantime, she stayed in the pool house. Jasmine worked for her family's construction business and was well known in her community.
All having a good day, and then I see her come in. She wrapped her arms around my neck, and
I've known her my entire life, and I've never seen her burn a bridge.
It's made it a point for you to know that she was thinking of you and that she loves you.
Jasmine had met her boyfriend Jason Chen a year earlier on Bumble. What started as a simple friendship had quickly turned into something more. Just recently, they'd begun dating, and while Jasmine's family hadn't met him yet, they knew about him. They thought they were just another young couple, excited about their growing relationship. They had also recently gone on a trip together to Chicago in late October. But how well did Jasmine truly know Jason? As we'll uncover in this case, some of the closest people to him would reveal things about him that were deeply concerning, some might even say devastating. Because when Jasmine stepped out of her home that night, she would never return. The next day, the family is still reeling from their beloved grandmother's passing, trying to process the weight of their loss. Then, Katrina receives a strange message from Jasmine. "I'm going with my girlfriend Emma to spend Thanksgiving in South Carolina." The wording seemed off, but Katrina didn't think much of it at the time. She felt this was an emotional response to loss, and Jasmine surely wasn't serious.
I'm going with my girlfriend Emma to spend Thanksgiving in South Carolina, which Jasmine wouldn't have texted me introducing Emma as her girlfriend because I knew Emma. Emma had spent lots of time around me, so there would be no reason for Jazzy to introduce her that way. That was odd.
But soon, things got even stranger. Jasmine didn't show up to her family's Thanksgiving the next day, which was huge for them. And this was all the more surprising because of the recent loss they had suffered. And even worse, Jasmine hadn't responded to her family since sending that text on November 23rd. And now her mother was worried.
Our mom has not an ounce of sleep. I don't think she is a.
Katrina tried calling Jasmine repeatedly, but couldn't get through. She then reached out to Emma, but was shocked to discover that Jasmine never met her. Also, Emma is from Kentucky, not South Carolina. Why did Jasmine text say South Carolina? A mix of panic and worry consumed the family. They considered many possibilities, including if Jasmine had run away to grieve on her own. 2 more days went by and there was no word from Jasmine. Then came the bizarre Facebook post. Jasmine's account shared a photo of her in lingerie, accompanied by several short videos.
It was not a modest photograph posted on Facebook, and anybody that knew Jasmine knew she would not have posted that.
But her friends and family immediately knew this was a lie. Not only was her photo outdated, Jasmine's recent tattoos weren't visible in the image. There was also a visible chat button in the photo, as if it had been pulled from private conversation. The comments flooded in. She didn't post this, y'all, and many more. Katrina, desperate for answers, used the McChevy app to track Jasmine's car. It was parked at 900 Mountain Creek Road. When they arrived, they found Jasmine's Chevrolet abandoned. Friends and family began knocking on doors, asking if anyone had seen her. By 7:10 p.m., they had no choice but to call the police and file a missing persons report. At some point, Jasmine's biological father was also made aware of her disappearance. As Jasmine was on the Verizon phone family plan, Katrina was able to get a hold of her phone records. There she discovered that Jasmine had spoken with Jason for more than an hour on November 22nd, the night she disappeared. But it didn't stop there. There was also a message from Jason sent the very next day to Jasmine. "Hey, are we still good for dinner tonight?" That message was unread. Katrina immediately called Jason. His responses were vague, evasive, but he gave her his home address, 500 Tremont Street. But when they arrived, it was an abandoned house under construction. Jason had lied. This behavior raised red flags. Why wasn't he helping in her search? Why didn't he seem concerned? But worst of all, why did he give them the wrong address? Then, Katrina noted something she had previously missed. She had received a location pin drop on her phone from Jasmine. Hours after she had walked out that night, the pin drop was at 2:15 a.m. at November 23rd, and the location was 110 Tremont Street. Desperate for answers, the family, including Jasmine's biological father, rushed to the address. They found and spoke to a neighbor who revealed that Jason Chen resided in apartment 210. But when they knocked on the apartment door, there was no response, and it didn't seem like anyone was inside. Then, Jasmine's biological father, Travis, decided to take matters into his own hands. He went around the back, opened the door, breaking the lock in the process, and armed with a pistol, he checked the apartment, room by room, before heading to the front door to open it from the inside, letting in the rest of her family. Inside, they found cleaning supplies, items with Jason's name on them, but most concerningly, Jasmine's credit cards, ID, and travel bag. But there was no sign of Jasmine, and no sign of Jason either. After her dad laid it all out on the table, they called the police to show them what they had found. Partly, the reason for why they broke in is because they felt the police weren't investigating her disappearance fast enough. The next day, November 27th, at approximately 11:40 p.m., police executed a search warrant at Jason Chen's apartment. To the naked eye, it looked like an ordinary apartment, but then, with the help of Crime Scene Unit or CSI, what they found was chilling. They deployed the Blue Star Forensic Blood Reagent, a chemical that reveals bloodstains. And when it reacted, the entire apartment lit up. It was like a glowworm cave. Bloodstains and blood spatter was everywhere. There was staining on the bathroom walls, in the living room, and cleaning supplies sat discarded on the couch. They appeared to be recently purchased from a nearby Walgreens. There was no question now. Extreme violence had taken place, and the blood was probably Jasmine's. Additional broken glass was also found on the floor. A neighbor who lived directly below Jason's apartment stated they woke up to a loud female scream at 2:11 a.m.
Woken up in the middle of the night by a loud scream. There was a scream that startled me out of my sleep. I checked my phone to see the time because I was going to call 911. It was around 2 a.m. There was a voice that was screaming words. The words I couldn't understand fully. A female voice. There sounded like chasing, a lot of footsteps going across towards the front door. By the time I settled down from being abruptly woken up and thought that I heard footsteps go across and a door slam, I thought that it had just been a normal apartment argument and everything kind of calmed down.
So they assumed that the argument upstairs had died down, but this would be a mistake. Remember, Jasmine sent a pin to her mother at 2:15 a.m., so this is after her screams and during whatever had taken place upstairs. We'll revisit that in a moment. Surveillance footage revealed some shocking clues. On November 23rd, footage revealed Jason leaving his apartment and heading to the car park, his right hand injured and wrapped in a black fabric. Later that day, at 1:41 p.m., Jason was spotted on camera at the Walgreens near his apartment, purchasing 2 bottles of peroxide and bandages. And that evening at 6 p.m., video footage showed Jason leaving his apartment again, and this is the footage of him dragging that suitcase. This is alarming, of course, because Jasmine is a petite woman weighing less than 100 pounds. Detectives wondered if she was in that suitcase. He's seen driving off in his car and recognizable in the driver's seat. Jason was then spotted by a camera at Walgreens at around 7:03 p.m. He purchased rubbing alcohol, 2 more bottles of peroxide, and a 6-pack of paper towels. Though the police still hadn't located Jasmine, the mounting evidence was more than enough to link Jason to her disappearance and obtain an arrest warrant for him. On November 29, 2022, Jason was arrested at his parents' home, located at Nowensville, Tennessee.
You said Jason, and translation that? What language do you speak? Chinese, Mandarin. We were here, we had Dr. Moore. If anybody else all right, you're going to go with this officer right here. We're going to patch down, make sure you don't have anything on you. Since you're in the back of the police car, so, we also have a search warrant for your person. For what person? Correct. Okay. He's going to pat you down, he's going to place you in handcuffs. He's not place you in arrest, you just call, so you go to the back of the car, so you put the handcuffs. Okay.
So, you said there was a search warrant for me?
Correct. Yeah, there's a search warrant for your person, so we're, Nowensville Police Department, we're going to be detaining you in compliance with that search warrant. We're assisting Chen to do it. So they'll tell you all that when we get down there, so just take it from them. They're the lead on this. All right, so if you will, just face away from me. All right, do you have anything on your person? Drugs, weapons? All right.
He had lacerations on his right hand and feet, but it wasn't just his injuries that implicated him. It was what they found in his room. Notes that referenced Jasmine. One claimed she had run away and gone to Canada. Another claimed Jasmine had a restraining order against her ex. He was planning his deception and using seemingly Jasmine's own words and actions to cover up his horrific crime. Other notes were there for him to brainstorm for how he would speak to the police when questioned. One note read, "If law enforcement contacts other family members, what do they do?" Another note read, "Last time I saw Jasmine was on Saturday, November 19th. Last time we spoke on the phone was Tuesday, November 22nd. On December 1st, investigators obtained Jason's phone records. They discovered that Jason had inserted his SIM card into Jasmine's phone on November 25th, sending fake messages and posting that Facebook update, and more desperate attempts to cover his tracks. Police were able to trace Jason's movements to Suck Creek Road between November 22nd and 23rd. The search was swift because just within 30 seconds, they found a suitcase 10 to 15 feet from the river. Inside, wrapped in 3 black trash bags, was Jasmine's lifeless body. It was brutal. She was handcuffed and tied in the fetal position and appeared to be punctured by dozens of stab wounds. The location he chose to dump her body was disturbing, because earlier that month, Jason had messaged Jasmine asking her to come to Suck Creek Road the weekend before all the leaves had fallen from the trees. It seemed eerie that he dumped her body here, so careless and disrespectful, as if she was nothing but trash. Dr. Cogswell performed the autopsy on Jasmine, and what he found was horrifying as it is heartbreaking. She had sustained an incomprehensible 60 stab wounds, all while she was alive. The attack had been so vicious that the knife had broken off inside Jasmine's lungs. Wounds were inflicted across multiple areas of her face. The brutality of these blows caused massive bleeding. Deeper wounds near her neck impaired her ability to speak, and they caused her lungs to fill with blood. Is this when, and possibly why, Jasmine sent that pin to her mother at 2:15 a.m.? The timing is unbearable to consider, especially when we know that the neighbor below heard agonizing screams just minutes before that. The thought alone is extremely saddening. Clusters of injuries were concentrated on her upper right side, each inflicted from right to left. This suggests that Jasmine had likely been stabbed initially while trying to defend herself. In the chaos of the attack, she may have curled into the fetal position on her left side, but Jason continued to viciously stab her on the right. After the initial assault, Jasmine was rolled onto the carpet where she continued to bleed to death. None of her wounds were immediately fatal. No, she suffered as she bled out, her life draining away slowly, agonizingly. I can't even imagine the horror that Jasmine must have endured in those final moments. Murdered by the very person she sought solace and comfort in after her great-grandmother's passing. This was a sick, remorseless act of violence, overkill, plain and simple. After news of Jasmine Pace's murder broke, some of the people who knew Jason Chen began to speak out about his character. Many described him as having a weird vibe, and former classmates claimed that Jason had a history of impersonating people online.
Going through all my accounts, kind of slandering my name on social media, through different work ventures, etc. along those lines, messaging people from my hometown, just hateful messages.
His personality is just very off, and he's not very good at social cues and things like that.
They said he kind of gave off just like a weird vibe, like this like kind of unsettled people with just kind of like how he behaved.
The trial of Jason Chen began on January 13th, 2025. He pleaded not guilty to premeditated murder and abuse of a corpse. His defense tried to claim it was voluntary manslaughter, asserting that Jasmine had attacked him with a wine bottle after finding Tinder notifications on his phone. However, forensic evidence contradicted the story. There was no Tinder activity on November 22nd, and Jasmine had no substances in her system. And did Jason show shock or remorse after the crime? Well, apparently not, because he was found casually messaging girls on Tinder on November 25th and November 28th. Throughout the trial, Jason displayed no real emotion. When Dr. Cogswell described the autopsy findings, Jason lowered his head, avoiding the truth of what he'd done. The only time he showed any emotion was when he cried watching his mother's tearful testimony at his sentence hearing. Jason's mother, speaking only in Chinese, pleaded for mercy from the judge, begging for leniency, stating that her son had his whole life ahead of him. Yet, in her words, there was no mention of Jasmine, no recognition of the profound loss that Jasmine's family now had to carry for the rest of their lives. Had Jason committed his crime back in China, he would most likely have been sentenced to death instead of the sentence he did receive. I can understand the needs of a grieving mother, but still found it selfish and distasteful that she only showed any sympathy for her own son.
With respect to count 1 of presentment 315-228, we, the jury, find the defendant, Jason Chen, guilty of first-degree premeditated murder.
This is an emotional verdict. Everyone needs to maintain decorum, please.
On January 21st, 2025, Jason Chen was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The jury took just 40 minutes to reach a verdict. As Jason serves his sentence at the Bledsoe County Corrections Complex, Jasmine's family continues to honor her memory.
I am a lost soul from Neverland.
But Jason's story doesn't end here. He has filed for a new trial, arguing that his conviction was unjust, that the evidence didn't support the verdict, and he was denied a fair trial. Some argued that there was no real motive presented for the crime, but the judge reminded people that motive is not necessary to prove what occurred. And do psychopaths always need a strong reason to kill? It's a disturbing question, but the truth is, their motives don't always make sense. There's always something underneath, a fragile ego or a deep-seated need for control, something that can snap without a warning. But the real story here, the one that should stay with us, is not Jason's twisted motivations. It's about Jasmine. I don't believe even this sentencing can bring them true justice, because it can never bring Jasmine back. But at the very least, Jason will never be part of society again. Considering what he did, I don't believe this was an unfair trial. But what do you guys think? Thanks for watching. Until next time.